On the night of January 25th, 2019, Mrs Douglas Ajemine made a phone call to her distant husband, Mr Charles Tyger. The two have been separated for quite a while after Mr Charles betrayed her in such a manner that shattered her heart into 1,000 pieces. Because of this horrible act of betrayal, the couple started having a serious marital issue, which was no secret to their extended families. Charles had made several attempts to reconcile with his wife, even though the sin he committed against her was a very difficult one to forgive. His attempts have always been met with strong resistance by Douglas, as she was not ready to forgive him yet. However, when she called him that night, Charles saw a glimmer of hope that they may reconcile their differences and return to living as a couple once again. Little did he know that this phone call from his wife was one that would ensure his tragic exit from this world. Douglas asked his husband to come over to her place in Abalama, Rivers State, Nigeria, where they used to live together before their separation. She also told him to buy some suya, a spicy Nigerian meat delicacy, while on his way there. Charles was excited at the thought of finally making peace with his wife after numerous failed attempts. As such, he wasted no time in heading over there. Charles bought the suya, but before he left for her place, he informed his friends that he would be visiting her in Abalama for a potential reconciliation. This single act by Charles would later turn out to become the most crucial clue in solving this tragic case. After buying the suya, he entered his car to leave for his wife's place, and that was the last time he would ever be seen alive. After that day, Charles' brothers received a text message from him saying that he would be traveling out of the state on a business trip. They were relaxed at first, but things took a terrifying turn when they tried to reach him again over the next couple of days, and his phone was found to be constantly switched off. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, but Charles was nowhere to be found. The family tried to reach out to Douglas about her husband's whereabouts, but her phone was also switched off. They also found out that she had left her place in Abalama to an unknown location. The family became suspicious of Douglas since she was the last person to see Charles alive. The fact that she was in hiding made them even more convinced that she may know something about Charles' disappearance. After several failed attempts to locate him, the family finally reported Charles missing to the Rivers State Police. The police then began their investigation into uncovering the circumstances surrounding the sudden disappearance of Charles Tyger. Shortly after launching their investigation, the police found Charles' car parked openly in a nearby market. However, Charles was not inside the car, neither was he anywhere close to the area. It was at this point that the police knew something was definitely wrong, but how wrong things had gone was something they never would have imagined. Charles Tyger was a 40-year-old father of two. He met his wife, 41-year-old Douglas Ajemine, who was also a mother of two, 5 years before his sudden disappearance. Charles had pleaded with Douglas to assist him in looking after his two children because they were no longer going to school since there was no woman to take care of them. Douglas saw reason with him and then decided to move into his house. However, she would spend 2 weeks with Charles' children, after which she would return to her house to look after her own two children. Later that year, Charles proposed to her that instead of the usual 2 weeks in and 2 weeks out she had been doing, they should just live together as a family under one roof. Douglas agreed to this proposal and then decided to live with him fully. However, things took a turn for the worse 2 years after they started living together. Charles lost his job in the oil and gas company he was working at. He was struggling to pay his house rent as well as his children's school fees. Douglas then suggested that they relocate to a place in her village, pending when he gets a job, to afford to rent his own place once again. Charles agreed to her suggestion and they both moved down there together with his children. 3 months after this move, Charles officially got married to Douglas. They later relocated to his family house where things began to go very wrong. Due to his joblessness, Charles started being very aggressive and abusive towards Douglas. He would insult and also assault her with the slightest provocation. In order to make some money, Charles ventured into illegal oil bunkering. He made some money from the venture and then relocated to Port Harcourt, the capital city of Rivers State, leaving behind his wife and children. Douglas would visit him in his new place from time to time, but after a while, Charles stopped her from coming to see him anymore. Unknown to her, Charles had met another woman while living in Port Harcourt. The two had an affair, and along the line, this affair produced a problem that made Charles desperate to hide from his wife. Charles got his mistress pregnant, and she also moved in with him. He tried his best to keep this affair secret from his wife, which was probably why he stopped her from coming to visit him again. However, one day, Douglas took Charles' daughter to visit him in Port Harcourt. When she got there, she was shocked to find out that Charles was now living with another woman. She was furious and then took the woman's clothes to go show his family as evidence of his infidelity. This didn't sit well with Charles, so he went to his family house where his wife was still living with their kids to pack all his clothes. His mistress also burnt all the clothes Douglas had left in her husband's new place. After a while, Charles began selling things in their family house. Douglas claimed he would beat her up each time he came around. Because of this, she moved out of his family house and then rented a place in Abalama, which was just a few kilometers from Port Harcourt. She kept the location of her new place a secret from Charles, but he later found out about it. Douglas claimed he would come around to continue the assault. He would also force intimacy with her. She claimed that at some point, Charles went to a native doctor to get a charm that would end her life. Now, this is where things began to get really interesting. While all this were going on, Douglas met a man named Kingsley, who was in the company of his friend, identified simply as Sonny. This happened when she moved into a new place in Abalama. She had told Kingsley everything about the harassment she had been suffering from her husband, and also assured him that it was a matter of time before he started coming to a new place to continue the act. Kingsley then told her that whenever her husband calls and wants to come over, she should call them to come and protect her or scream so that the people in the community will come to her rescue. What the two friends didn't know was that this presumed act of kindness towards a defenseless woman would later turn out to become one that would change their lives forever. After 6 months of investigation, the police finally arrested Douglas and took her into custody for interrogation. It was during questioning that Douglas made the chilling confession that sent shivers down everyone's spine. It turned out that Douglas had unknowingly ordered a hit on her husband, Charles Tyger. She paid Kingsley and his friend Sonny the sum of 50,000 naira, promising to call them to come beat up her husband whenever he came around. Douglas called Kingsley the next day to inform him that her husband was coming over. Kingsley then passed the message to Sonny, and both of them prepared for the showdown. When the two friends got to the house, they found Douglas and her husband undressed in bed. It appeared like they had just finished intimacy. The room was dark and Charles was still asleep. Sonny then blindfolded Charles and the two began beating him up. Douglas left the room for them because she didn't want to watch the assault. Charles woke up and started struggling with them. He eventually took off the blindfold and was able to recognize Sonny. He started speaking his Calabari language with him, since they were both from the same tribe. It was at this point that his fate was sealed. Sonny told Kingsley that they should silence him for good, since he did not only see their faces, but was also able to recognize him. The two then proceeded to end his life that night. After committing this heinous act, they went out to inform Douglas that her husband was dead. Douglas was shocked and confused because taking his life was never part of the plan. However, she snapped out of it and then brought a shovel, which they used to dig a shallow grave behind the house to bury Charles. Douglas tried to cover up the crime by using her late husband's phone to text his brothers, telling them that he had traveled out of the state for a business meeting. They also parked Charles' car close to a nearby market where it could easily be discovered by the police. The next day, Douglas called Kingsley to give him an additional 30,000 naira. On the evening of that same day, she called him again and requested intimacy. The two hooked up 3 times after the murder. Kingsley then stopped picking up her calls and replying to her messages because he believed that she was trying to make him her husband. The police arrested Kingsley and his friend Sonny in connection to the crime. The two suspects gave their own side of the story, which helped to uncover some of the lies Douglas had initially told the police during interrogation. The three suspects then led the police to the spot where they buried Charles that night. At the time of making this video, there was no news article or court document stating that the three suspects were convicted of their crimes. They might have been sentenced without it making the news. Now, who do you think should take the blame in this particular case? It is clear that Charles' harassment played a big role in driving Douglas to make the decision that resulted in his tragic death. It is also clear that Douglas' intention was not to murder her husband, rather, she just wanted to teach him a lesson, probably to stop him from assaulting her again in the future. It just so happened that things took a dark twist for the worse, putting her in prison and leaving all four children with neither a father or a mother. Share your thoughts on this case in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe to this channel for more true crime stories. Thank you for watching and stay safe.